And welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Just Parlays show here at the Max Wagers Network. I'm your co-host, Scott Reichel, and joining me, as always, is the parlay expert, Chris King. Chris is going with you. How was your Monday?
I just want to point out to everybody that watched the show yesterday that you can blame the Yankees for screwing things up.
I believe I had that. I believe I said there's no chance I'm laying 250, even though Cole's amazing, because the team can't hit. And you mentioned, well, what about all these random pitchers Tampa throws in there? I'm like, they could throw Mike Minor out there. They still would probably won by a shutout. But the Yankees are a mess. And I wasn't sure if you wanted to start with this point. I'm assuming you did because they kind of sabotaged a lot of the parlays that you had yesterday. But I don't even know where you go from here besides just you got to bench Hicks. That's obvious, but Bader's still injured. But the Yankees have seemed to do what they did last year, which is accept the fact that they're basically going to make the playoffs. Last year was a bit dicier than they wanted it to be. But the fact is, Toronto keeps losing. So the Yankees are still up basically 10 games in the division, and there's no sense of urgency to change anything. And I mentioned that yesterday, but you go down the line, and you go specifically down the lineup. What do they have? Judge, we know, has been an MVP candidate. He's probably going to win the award unless he gets injured. It wasn't good yesterday, but he can't be Superman every night. Rizzo's biggest contribution yesterday was leaning into a pitch and getting a strikeout call against him.
I saw the back and forth of the umpire on that one. That was interesting.
For the record, he clearly leaned into the pitch. That was clearly intentional. Like, he just stuck both his knees out.
He gets hit enough that, you give him the benefit of the doubt.
I thought it was the right call, if I'm being completely honest. I respect the fact that Rizzo was thinking outside the box to try to get on base. Hicks hit into the double play. The Yankees had no runners in scoring position for about the final 5 innings or 4 innings. It was an absolute mess.
And don't forget that Hicks also misplayed that ball for a triple.
And that resulted in a run, of course.
Which was the only run of the game going to the ninth.
And you could say, well, Tampa scored a couple more, but I guarantee you if it was 0-0, Trevino's not pitching in the ninth. So to go through the actual lineup, Torres led off. He went 2 for 4. He actually played well yesterday. Judge went 1 for 4. Rizzo went 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. He looked awful at the plate for a decent amount of it. Donaldson 0 for, Andujar 1 for 4, Benintendi 0 for 3, Chirino 1 for 4, IKF went 1 for 2, and Hicks went 0 for 3 with the big double play. So you can really look at the lineup, and besides Judge and really Torres, who had 2 hits yesterday, I know a couple of guys went 1 for 4 yesterday, but does anybody in the bottom 6 or the bottom 5 of the lineup really scare you? I mean, they had Donaldson in the cleanup spot last night.
Yeah, you're right. This lineup isn't very good. It obviously shows that they need Stanton back sooner rather than later because without him, they've kind of flatlined offensively.
And he hasn't started rehab yet. He's allegedly going to start a week from now, but we've talked about him potentially coming back a month ago, and the Yankees clearly slow played how badly hurt he was. So Stanton is still a couple weeks out minimum because he hasn't started rehabbing at all in terms of minor league appearances. So
have they got a timetable on Bader yet or no?
Bader, as far as I know, is still most likely going to be out until September. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know how you can play Hicks every day. I don't know how you have Florial, or you could even use LeCastro. I'd really rather have LeCastro than Hicks because at least LeCastro can run. At least he can steal some bases. He can give you something. But Hicks, you could make an argument, is one of the worst players in baseball if you really just watch him play. And the issue is he's really not good at anything because even when he couldn't hit, you at least had an argument that he used to be a very good outfielder. And that was kind of the saving grace for Gallo, who had won a Gold Glove before. So even when he was striking out, he would give you decent defense. You saw yesterday in center field, Hicks isn't giving you good defense, so I don't know why he's in the game.
Yeah, he's not giving you good defense. He's not giving you good offense. I mean, we saw him beat the ball to the ground about 50 feet for a 1-2-3 double play in the fourth. And like you said, that was it for the Yankees having anybody in scoring position the rest of the game. Rice says Harper swinging a bat.
That's good.
It's good for the Phillies. Is Schwarber still going to be out? I'm guessing. But, yeah, the Yankees, Hicks can't – you could put anybody out there right now. You could put Steen out there at 350 years old, and he'd probably still be better than Hicks.
Look, all I'll tell you is if the bases are loaded, I'll strike out, so I'll save you an out. And that's how I would look at it. But
yeah, then at least you turn the order over.
I'm going to say Hicks can't He just can't play. He's bad. I mean, he should get DFA'd. I think when Bader comes back, the truth is I don't think Hicks is going to make the playoff roster, which sounds obvious, but based on the contract and the fact he's still playing every day, you'd assume the Yankees might keep him on the roster. I don't think he's going to be there for October.
Well, you said the same thing about Trevino last night when we were talking about it.
Yeah, he's not going to be there for October. At least in my opinion, he won't be. I
mean, what can the Yankees do at this point? I mean, obviously, like you said, there is no sense of urgency. Toronto lost again yesterday. We talked about Kikuchi sucking, and well, guess what? He sucked again.
Mountcastle, so good against Toronto. It never ends, man. It never ends.
But yeah, I mean, Kikuchi gone after 3 1/3. He gave up 6 runs. The Blue Jays lost.
You texted me, when do I think it's going to end? And I said indefinitely, because there's no reason for it to end soon when there's no pressure being put on you to produce.
That's true. Rai says Schwarber should be back Friday for the Mets series. Speaking of the Mets, that's one of the ones I can actually say I got that you didn't because
yes, I was dead wrong on that one. Yeah,
and I mean it's bad when the best pitcher for the Mets is a position player that can't hit and got traded from the Giants.
I was going to say a pinch hit relief pitcher because he usually comes up in pinch hitting spots against lefties. That's basically all he does on that team. But very good win for the Braves. They kind of needed it, especially Strider, after he basically called the Mets a really, really lucky in Citi Field and then proceeded to pitch well in 5 innings, and they won 13-1. So that was a nice little victory for him. But, yeah, I was wrong about that game. It was mostly for the value. I thought Atlanta had a decent shot to win the game, but I saw the Mets at plus 130 and just said, okay. I mean, we're going to talk about a game later today, most likely, where one team is plus money. There's a significant pitching advantage for the other team, but it's plus money, so you have to at least consider it. I'm not going to say which matchup it is, but
I left that one out, but we can talk about it anyway.
Okay, so you left it out. It was the Dodgers. That was the one I was talking about.
Yeah, Pepio and Woodruff.
Dodgers are plus money against Woodruff. I get it because the Dodgers don't have a good pitcher on the mound, but the Dodgers have been so good, and Milwaukee still can't hit. It's plus
as they showed yesterday.
I was going to say it's plus money on principle, so that's kind of why I lean to the Mets. That's why I'm also leaning to the Dodgers today, even though I don't like the Dodgers starting pitcher at all. But they're so good, you don't really see many plus numbers in front of the Dodgers.
That's true.
So,
and the other game that really ticked me off, probably ticked off a lot of other people yesterday. I know somebody's gonna, as soon as I say this, they're going to say, "We told you that line was shady." The Astros were cruising along until Dusty Baker did Dusty Baker things. I'm starting to wonder who's worse as manager, Dusty Baker or Tony La Russa. Sadly, they were matched up in the same game, so somebody had to win. Urquidy had gone through 7 2/3 innings. He gives up an infield hit, and Dusty Baker pulls him at 94 pitches to bring in Rafael Montero, who, sure, everybody's going to say he's pitched well. I remember when he pitched in Chicago, he wasn't good.
I'm going to say he's streaky at best, historically speaking.
Yeah, he comes in, gives up a double, then he gives up a 2-run double to Jimenez, then he intentionally walks Abreu, he walks Grandal, and then gives up a 2-run single to Moncada, and all of a sudden that 2-0 lead is a 4-2 deficit, and the Astros lose.
I don't know what Urquidy's pitch count was in previous starts, so I don't know if that was like the ceiling. They gave him one batter because maybe he had not gone over 90 previously. I'd assume he had one start with 100 in there. So I feel like you could have given him one more batter. But do you know who the batter was that he got pulled against?
He got pulled after giving up the next hitter up was Vaughn.
Okay, that's not. I figured if it was Abreu or somebody, like, all right, maybe you don't want him to see him for a third time.
No, Abreu came up like a couple hitters later because he's the guy that got intentionally walked. It was Vaughn, then it was Jimenez doubled to tie the game. Then they intentionally walked Abreu. So he was still 3 batters down the line.
But it was Vaughn, so that's not exactly a big threat in the lineup. They probably should have kept him in. I was going to say, if you pull him because you don't want him to face Eloy or Abreu for a third time, okay, maybe there's some logic in that. But Vaughn?
Well, it would have been the 4th time, actually, because he had already faced him 3 times.
Sorry, I would have given him Vaughn. I would have given him Vaughn if Vaughn got on base, especially since Vaughn's mostly a home run or bust guy. I don't think the guy's going to score from first base on that. So
Urquidy's last handful of starts, 104, 100, 104, 98, 97, 105, 106.
So he could have gone one more batter, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he had gone 7 2/3.
Yeah.
I mean, Why go to the bullpen there? And Montero, like you said, he's streaky, and he picked a bad time to be streaky bad.
I would have went to the bullpen against the core of the lineup. Vaughn's not the core as far as I'm concerned. I would have given Urquidy one more.
And the stupid thing is he threw Montero the day before against Oakland, and he gave up 2 runs and got 1 out. So You're looking at his last 3 appearances. He's given up a run in each. He's given up 6 runs on 6 hits with 3 walks and 2 strikeouts in an inning and a third. Why? Why bring him in? If you're going to bring anybody in, bring in Presley.
Well, you heard the White Sox were favored.
It was just horrible.
Actually, a pretty fun side note. My friends were actually in Chicago randomly, and they actually went to the game yesterday. So maybe
did they get tickets for like $3?
I think it was 25, but it was down the third baseline. But maybe Dusty Baker realized my friends were in attendance and got the White Sox a win. They're not even White Sox fans. They were just at the game because they were in Chicago and thought, why not? So
they were just there.
Well, my friend said that he was going to go to Wrigley, but they were on the road. So
yeah, they were in Washington.
So they went to the White Sox game instead. So even when the Cubs are bad, my friend who does not follow baseball at all would still rather go to Wrigley because of the historical significance. So there you go.
Oh, yeah. Who the hell wants to go to Guaranteed Rate Field?
That's fair. Truth is, I feel like most people forgot what the name even was.
That's probably true. I remember when it was still Comiskey Park.
I still call it Comiskey Park.
But Andrew says it's another must-win for the Braves tonight. Scherzer and DeGrom going Wednesday and Thursday.
That's the fun part for the Yankees, by the way. Yankees are on pace to face off against Scherzer and DeGrom while this team can't hit. Back-to-back days.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's what I'm saying. They're on. The Yankees are going to face off against Scherzer and DeGrom. So
when's that, next week?
I believe so. Get your team total unders ready because it's going to be messy.
And Rye says the Dodgers and the Rays are good dogs today. I know you just talked about how you can't trust the Yankees. Are you going to back Tampa Bay with Jeffrey Springs over Nestor, as Jim Cott calls him, Nestor the Molester?
He's been good, Cortez. So is Springs, though. You look at the last month, his ERA, I believe, is 2.66. But I actually do have a play today on this for YouTube. I just picked a prop. I took the race to 6 runs, neither, at minus 140. I woke up this morning, it's minus 175. I don't know how a full game total.
You find a race to 6?
It was on DraftKings. DraftKings had it and Caesars had it. So it's actually available. I know FanDuel usually has it, but they didn't have it at like 2 in the morning when I recorded. But DraftKings moved it to 175. I think Caesars still has like 155. But I don't know how a full game total could be 7.5, and now it's 7. And you could tell me that neither team to individually score 6 runs is minus 140. I'll gladly pay the extra 15, 20 cents of juice to prevent a 6 spot from one of these teams. So, yes, that was my play.
This game will end up like 7-2 or something because something will invariably happen.
The bright side, though, that I factored in, Trevino's not going to pitch today, so that's going to help me out. But Holmes
that's
might.
A valid point.
I don't know what happened to Holmes. I don't know if he's going to be available or not. They might have put him on the mystery IL diagnosis. But I don't know. I saw that, and I knew I was going to take an under, but I do like Cortez. So I liked the full game under, but 7.5 with the wind blowing in was tempting. Decided to take the race to 6 because why the hell would I think either of these teams are getting to 6 runs?
What do you make of the Mets Braves tonight? It's Walker and Charlie Morton.
Morton has been one of those pitchers that I feel like every time I expect to be good, he sucks, but I'm still high on based on reputation, if that makes sense. I think I'm going to go with the Braves in this one. I understand that Morton's recent performances have not been great. However, both of his bad recent starts have been on the road. Gave up 5 runs against Boston and gave up 4 runs against Philly. But he faced Philly right after his blow-up start at home, 6 2/3, no runs. And then he faced the Angels before that, 6 innings, no runs. And now he did face off against the Mets on July 13th at home. Did not pitch well, 5 innings, 5 runs. But I'm trying to figure out if I actually like Taijuan Walker. And he's been good this year, but the Braves are 155. It was
135 yesterday when I did the game.
That's the thing, though. Yesterday I tried to make a stance on Carrasco at plus money. I'm at the point where the Braves are such a big favorite in this game. It feels like a trap line because Walker's been so much better than Morton this season. And Morton is still laying 155. Like yesterday, I made an argument because Strider was good, but so was Carrasco. So they kind of canceled each other out to some degree. I think the Mets clearly have the better starter here. And yet money's poured in on Atlanta. And I'm not sure how much of that's an overreaction from yesterday or how much of that is people just saying Atlanta's at home. They're going to come out and get revenge for what happened in Citi Field last week. I'm going to lean to the Braves.
I think also part of it is the fact that, the Mets took 4 out of 5 in that series, but the one where they won was against Taijuan Walker, where he got shelled for 8 runs in 1 inning.
Yeah.
And, I think that might be a factor as well.
That was the Empire State Building.
I do a lot better at 135 than I do at 155.
The Taijuan Walker start was the Empire State Building game on Friday.
There you go.
If you know what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure what you mean.
The Mets announced right before the Friday night game, in which Walker got absolutely destroyed, that they were going to display the score through lights on the Empire State Building. And
nice.
The Braves immediately went up like 8-0 in the second inning. And it was just like, all right, thanks
they
for that.
They should have turned the lights off.
Yes, it was the Empire State Building game, and they ended up losing like 9-5.
But in the case of Morton, can you arguably say that Morton is probably, a snake bit pitcher? Because you look, he's got since beginning of July, he's got 3 starts where he gave up no runs in at least 6 innings of work and got no decisions.
That could work for and against him, though, because you might not want to lay 155 with a guy that's snake bitten.
Well, I'm just saying from a personal perspective, because, you look at, he's got actually, then he had a start like that in June against the Cubs. So he's got 4 starts where he's gone at least 6 innings, given up no runs, and ended up with a nothing decision.
I think my favorite play on this game is actually going to be the over, because I do see some red flags with both pitchers here. Walker just got shelled by the Braves, and if you look at Morton's numbers, that one bad start against the Mets was not, I'd say, on its own, because he's faced the Mets twice this season, 10 2/3 innings pitched, 7.59 ERA. So both pitchers have been struggling, and we saw Atlanta's offense explode yesterday at home. I like the over as my favorite play on this game. I think that either team could potentially score 7.
I would agree with that. I mean, I picked the over for when I wrote the game up, just because of the fact that, like you said, both these teams are good offensively. You got a lot of good hitters on both teams. And Atlanta scores a ton of runs at home, and they give up a ton of runs at home. Yeah, for whatever reason, they can't pitch at home.
So I'd lean to the Braves, but once again, I'm not exactly sold on either side, but I do like the over in that game. But I know we're going to continue talking about baseball in a second. However, we do have to remind everybody that we are continuing our college football conference breakdown. And we've moved
college
on
football starts less than 2 weeks now.
It does. Are you excited for the Ireland game?
Yeah, it should be interesting. I mean, they were going to do that, what, was it last year or 2 years ago, and they had to cancel it and move it to and then they played at Annapolis with Notre Dame and Navy.
I'm not saying that Nebraska fans need an excuse to drink, but they would have been drinking a lot more in Ireland if Adrian Martinez was still the quarterback. So just going to throw that out there. But
hey, I'll tell you what, in Manhattan, they're all happy that they've got Adrian Martinez as a quarterback because he's better than anybody they put that's going to be there other than Skylar Thompson.
Also, they tried the Will Howard experiment, and I'm sure Steen does not want to talk about that one. So,
and real quick, Jeffrey Meyer, of course, everybody loves him.
Oh, I'm assuming he's an Orioles fan then.
DraftKings has a 100% profit boost on MLB today. You can bet up to $100, but parlays are allowed, so there's serious value there.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Meyer is an Orioles fan. Is that a fair assumption?
You're not going to say he's Tony Tarasco in disguise?
I was going to say he's either Tarasco or just really anybody that was associated with that Orioles team, but I'm assuming he's from the Maryland or D.C. area.
Are you Bill Ripken?
Could be Cal. I don't know what Cal's been up to for the last decade and change. The Ironman streak ended. I don't know what Cal's been doing for the last 20 years. But to move on to the actual conference breakdowns, we went through Conference USA, the most patriotic conference yesterday. Now we're going to end up going through the Sun Belt, Fun Belt, which is always going to be interesting, especially since we do have a new challenger in the conference. We have the newly promoted James Madison Dukes. And they are
watch for the Dukes, man.
They are joining the conference, and I will remind everybody that this conference does stick with the division format. We saw the Conference USA officially got rid of it. That is not the case with the Sun Belt. They do have divisions. So if you want to end up backing a team to make a deep run, you could either pick the best team that you like the most or pick the best team in the weakest conference and hope they end up winning a title game. So that's kind of the approach you could go with. But to go through the actual lines, you should not be surprised by who's favored. Appalachian State and Louisiana Lafayette are obviously the two favorites. App State's roughly plus 275 on Caesars, and Louisiana's roughly plus 360. Coastal's plus 550. Couple other teams there in double digits, but that's mostly the big three.
I'm going to say Marshall's one of the ones in double digits, and
I think Marshall, it varied. I think Marshall was around like 6 or 7, but some books might have even had 9. So you could have shopped around, maybe even a 10 in there. So you could shop around and find a decent line on Marshall. But I'll start off with Marshall. Do you think that there's any realistic team that could contend with the top 3?
I mean, if it's going to be anybody, it's probably going to be Marshall. I mean, Georgia State has issues.
Yeah. That's why I said Marshall, because I'm assuming Georgia State we're not going to pick, and we're not picking Georgia Southern or any of these other teams.
Yeah, we're not talking about Troy. James Madison, sure they're good in FCS, but last I knew they had a 3-way quarterback battle with, and one of the guys was Centillo, who transferred from Colorado State.
I hated that guy. Actually, I loved him because I faded Colorado State a lot, but he was not good at all.
I mean, the big thing for Marshall is, will Henry Colombi play good enough at quarterback to keep this offense going? I mean, they got a good running back in Ali. You've got Gamage. You've got so you got a good big play receiver. But the question is, Colombi, he's had time at Texas Tech, didn't really pan out there then, so he's transferred. I'm not sold on him. But they're going to have to get some good performances from him in order to stay in that race. But otherwise, outside of them, I don't think there's anybody else.
It was also a matter of Marshall with coaching, especially late in games, because I really thought they did a horrible job closing close games. And they had a lot of leads slip through the fingertips. It's why they weren't a serious threat compared to preseason expectations for potentially making a run to the conference title game. But they had
lost 4 games by a touchdown or less last year.
They had that awful loss on Thursday night to App State involving that. I'm trying to remember exactly how they lost it, but it was a last-minute score. Got outscored 10-0 in the fourth quarter. They blew a lead there. They lost a winnable game against Middle Tennessee State, and they were not a good team all season long.
They lost East Carolina at home before those two.
The East Carolina loss was especially brutal. That was the worst loss of the season because they got outscored 21-0 in the fourth quarter. They were up 38-21 with about 7 or 8 minutes to go, and they lost the game. So I'm still not sold on Marshall because I don't trust them late in games. Having said that, I am thrilled they finally don't have Wells as their quarterback because I thought that he was holding that team back for years. Colombi, I didn't think he was good at Tech, but I think he's good enough to excel in a weaker conference. So I think that he can actually – I think he's better than Wells. Like, Wells I thought was a mess last year. So I know the stats for Wells might have been okay, but – he was turnover prone in the biggest moments in every game. So I'm happy they made a transition and they realized they needed somebody else. But I don't think Marshall's going to make it. I do think, though, App State should be favored. I'm going to pick them. Now, I will concede that the 3 favorites aren't locks by any means. There are some question marks with each roster. But App State offensively should be the best offense in the conference, in my opinion, based on returning starters. Bryce is back. I know he was bad at Clemson, but he was really, really good last year.
He was bad at Clemson, didn't really play at Duke.
Yeah, didn't really play at Duke that much. I forgot he was even at Duke. But yeah, he was at Duke. It didn't go well. But when you go from the ACC to a group of 5, you're supposed to dominate, and Bryce did. But the ground game is fantastic. They have Noel and Peoples back, and that's the best, probably 2 individual running backs besides maybe Ali in the conference, and they play on the same team. So that's a nice tandem they got there. They got 4 starting offensive linemen back, so there should be some cohesion there with the offensive line. Now, the issue is the defense. The secondary is okay, but they lost 5 of their 6 leading tacklers, which is a question mark. But the schedule is okay. They play Troy at home, they play at Coastal, and they play at Marshall, but there's no Louisiana on the schedule. So they do dodge Louisiana, which is important. But Louisiana has even more question marks than Appalachian State because they lost their head coach with Napier, who went to Florida. And, of course, he took half the coaching staff. Levy Lewis is gone, who was their main quarterback for the last couple of years. And Chandler Fields is the new starting quarterback. He only attempted 13 passes last year, so there's a little bit of uncertainty regarding him. They also lost 2 of their 3 leading rushers. They got their leading rusher back in Smith, but Johnson Jr. and Bailey are both gone. They went elsewhere. They have a new defensive coordinator with a bunch of new defensive starters. They also lost 4 starting offensive linemen. Before the schedule, it's actually very favorable. They play Marshall on the road. They play Troy at home, but no App State and no Coastal on their schedule. So I'm going to start off with those 2. Who are you picking out of those 2 favorites to win the conference?
Out of those 2, I'd probably lean towards App State. My biggest concern with them is they lost their top 3 receivers. Sutton is gone, Williams is gone, Hennigan is gone. So somebody's going to have to step up, whether it's Christian Wells or if it's Deshaun Davis. Somebody's going to have to step up and catch the ball from Bryce because, if they can't throw the ball, I mean, sure, it's the first time in, almost a decade that they threw for more yards than they ran for last year.
I think that's going to change automatically next year because the running back grouping with that offensive line should be the best. I know Georgia Southern's, tries to run some option system, but they should average close to like 180 rushing yards a game if they really want to.
I mean, they averaged 192 last year. So
that's what I'm saying. They could push 200 if they really commit to the run.
And then, with Louisiana, like you said, they don't have a quarterback now. I should say they don't have a quarterback with a lot of experience. Napier's gone. Like you said, the coaching staff is in turmoil, and their defense isn't going to be as good as it was a year ago. They were 11th in the nation in scoring defense, giving up 18.5 points a game. They blew out App State last year at home. I don't think we're going to see that kind of performance this year. It's going to be a transition year, basically, because, new coaching staff, new quarterback. It's going to be tough for Louisiana. They'll still be good. I just don't think they're going to be good enough to win the conference. They might win their division because their division is terrible.
And that's actually going to segue me into something because we will talk about the third team in a second, but I do want to touch upon once again the idea of the division breakdown. And I mentioned it especially because Louisiana in a no division conference would have no shot this year. But if you want to talk about good value plays, Louisiana to win their division, I found plus 110 on Caesars. I think it's a great deal. And we just mentioned how Louisiana's missing a bunch of players from last year. But we really have to hammer home how much easier their division is compared to the other division. The other division is absolutely loaded. And to go through the actual breakdown, the East has App State, Coastal, Georgia State, Marshall, and James Madison if you think they might be able to do something from the transition from FCS. That's a lot of really good teams in one section. And you have the West, which is Louisiana, Troy, South Alabama, and Arkansas State. They really have to realign these divisions. They are not even close to each other. It's even more lopsided than the Big Ten.
And don't they have Southern Miss, too, in that division?
They do, but they weren't even worth mentioning. Because Southern Miss is just atrocious.
And Old Dominion, which division are they going to drop Old Dominion in?
Old Dominion, I got to assume, is going to end up in the Old Dominion's in the East, too.
And then you got Louisiana Monroe. Don't forget them.
Monroe is in the West.
Yeah, the doormats of the.
But you have Monroe, Texas State, and Southern Miss in the same division, and all three of them, if they win a combined 7 games, are going to have a parade together. Exactly. So I have to like the plus money there with Louisiana. This team is experienced. Their new coach did coach the bowl game, and they won. So there is a little bit of continuity there. It's not a lot, but it's some. And Louisiana still does very well in recruiting for Group of 5 schools. So I do think Louisiana is good enough to even win 7 games this year overall. And the truth is, as crazy as that sounds, if they end up winning like 5 conference games, that really might be enough to make it to a conference title. They might be huge dogs in the title game, but I don't mind them to win the division at plus 110 when your biggest competition is Troy.
Yeah, looking at their slate, they should probably win at least 8 games. You would think they got Southeastern Louisiana and Eastern Michigan at home. Then they go to Rice, and Rice is not very good. Let's be honest. Then they get Louisiana Monroe on the road. Then it's South Alabama at home. Then they have to go to Marshall. Then they get Arkansas State at home. Then they go to Southern Miss. Then it's Troy at home and Georgia Southern at home. For some reason, they're going to play Florida State in November.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And they close at Texas State.
The one thing you mentioned, though, is that the main competition is Troy. They play Troy at home.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. So if you want to talk about my favorite play, I know I usually do a win total segment, but I did like the plus money because Louisiana is still a solid program based on pedigree, and the rest of their division is really not good. So plus money, I'll take Louisiana.
I mean, you look, and Arkansas State won 2 games last year. Southern Miss won 3.
UL Monroe had a couple upsets in there, but they're not any good every year.
Yeah, South Alabama was 5-7. Texas State won 4 games, but they're probably going to be worse. Louisiana Monroe won 4, but one of those was over Jackson State where they won 12-7.
Didn't Troy win 5 games last year?
Troy won. Let me double check here.
I think they won 5.
I think you're right. Yeah, 5-7.
So you're telling me the second best team in the conference won 5 games last year. The second best team in the division, I should say, did not even reach a bowl game, and you're going to give me plus money.
And their conference wins were over Southern Miss, Georgia Southern, and South Alabama.
And Louisiana's owned that team in the past. And now, once again, if they had their entire core from last year, they'd be minus 300 to win the division. And I probably still would have taken it because that would have been free money. But plus 110, I mean, you got to have somebody who you can actually compete with. And right now in that division, there's nobody that's really going to compete with Louisiana.
Yeah, it's a bad division. I mean, this is ranked up there with what we've seen in some of the other small conferences where there's one division that's loaded with teams and one division that's absolutely crap, and this is crap.
Yeah, but
it's good for us because, like you said, Louisiana get plus money. You can't pass that up.
Yeah, I think that's, as far as I'm concerned, basically an auto play if you're willing to tie some money up in the future markets. But I do want to talk about the third team, which is a well-known team because McCall is back at quarterback, but it's Coastal Carolina. And unlike most of pretty solid or very good Group of 5 schools, their entire coaching staff has not been poached yet. So there is continuity.
It hasn't happened yet.
I was going to say, doesn't that surprise you at all? I figured after the bowl game appearance against Liberty and the win against BYU, they would have just taken the entire coaching staff already, but they're still around. McCall's back. They did lose their top 3 receivers. Likely was technically a tight end, but of course he was still a receiver basically. But Likely, Hiley, and Brown are all gone. So there's also some question marks. They also lost.
Shamari Jones is gone, who ran for over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, he's gone too. They lost 3 starting offensive linemen. They lost 9 starters on defense. So once again, the 3 favorites in the conference do have question marks. But they play at Marshall and they play App State. So
what is this? Everybody goes to all these teams get to go play at Marshall. Who does Marshall play on the road? Okay, they play at Notre Dame. Then they get Bowling Green on the road. They play at James Madison, Old Dominion, and Georgia Southern. So Marshall's got to feel pretty good because all the teams that are better than them have to come to Huntington, West Virginia, in the middle of nowhere, and be bored to tears because there's nothing else to do besides play the game and leave.
They could watch Randy Moss highlights and Chad Pennington.
Sure.
But I would have picked Marshall if they were in the other division. If they were in Louisiana's division, I'm picking Marshall to win that division. But the issue is they're in the most loaded division in that conference, and Marshall, even with a favorable schedule, is what? The 3rd most talented team? The 2nd most talented team? They're still not better than Appalachian State.
Right. And you have to wonder, are they going to be better than Coastal? Because even with Ali and Gamage and those guys in there, until Columbia proves that he can actually dominate or even be, better than average in a Group of 5 conference, you have to fade him going against McCall.
And that's my point. App State, they are playing at Coastal, but we just mentioned how many people Coastal's missing. There is a chance App State runs the table in conference play in the regular season. And if Marshall ends up losing 1 or 2 games, that's probably going to be enough for their doom, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely. I
So
mean, I just don't have faith in Marshall at this point, especially like you said with these other teams. There's this level, and then there's Marshall.
I just hated how they closed games last year. I don't trust them in close games.
And you're
And I
going to
think that's
run
a
into
concern.
those in conference play for
Yeah.
sure.
But I'm going with App State at plus 275. And my favorite prop dash future win to whatever the hell is Louisiana to win the West Division at plus 110. Those are my two plays.
Ryan said he uses Coastal for his franchise mode on his college football video game.
I'm assuming you only picked them because they have the greenish field.
Well, I mean, is that any different than playing as Boise State because of the blue turf?
No, not at all. I would pick Eastern Washington, but FCS teams are not in the game. So they are in the game, but you can't pick them, I think, for actual dynasty mode. So I would have picked the red field.
Is the new college football game out yet?
No, it comes out next year.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So what games are you guys playing that are old or current enough that have Coastal in it?
Coastal was in the last NCAA football game, which I'm trying to remember. I think, was it Denard Robinson on the cover? I think Tebow was 13 and Denard Robinson was 14. I have the game. It's one of the best sports games ever made.
I was going to say, it's been a while.
It's been a long time.
Game, right?
Is
that EA or is that 2K?
That was EA.
Okay.
It was the last college football game they made, and I think it's one of the best games ever made. Now, the best football game of all time is NFL 2K5 or Madden 2005. You can make an argument for either one, but those are the two best games as far as I'm concerned. But once again, back to the conference for a second. We're both going at.
Yeah, especially I like Coastal. They've got too many question marks to patch up at this point. It wouldn't surprise me if Coastal managed to knock off App State because by the time they meet, it's November. So they'll have time to work on those things. But I'll lean towards App State. And like you said, on the other side, it's going to be Louisiana. There's no other way to look at it.
Yeah, so plus 110 is my play as well for the West Division. But
and Ryan said it is Denard Robinson.
That's what I thought. So because I have the same game. Now it's time to transition over to the baseball card. But before we do that, some housekeeping. BetMGM has a great deal for first-time users of their app or website. Get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. All the information is in the show box. Check the age limits. And as always, bet responsibly. So, Chris, I'll let you do your thing. What's the first baseball game that you like?
I was also going to say, and also don't forget that, if you're looking for even more picks from everybody, you can find them on the website. My premium pick last night was the Phillies, who, of course, decided to try and score a bunch of runs early and then forget how to hit the rest of the game and maybe sweat out a 4-3 win over Fraley's Mike Minor.
Fraley's going to be really good trade bait in like a year. I actually like that guy. I think Fraley's not that bad.
Jim said, some guy named Jim Williams said he still has an electric football game where the players bounce their way down the field.
What was the name of that game?
I thought it was.
I forgot what it was called.
I think it was just electric football.
It's just called electric football? I wasn't sure if there was a name. Okay.
Yeah,
I know what it looks like. I forgot what it was called.
Yeah, you could never complete a pass because you try to throw that little foam thing and it would go like 2 inches and fall down.
I prefer paper football with the flicking of the piece of paper across the table. But
yeah, those were fun though. But yeah, we'll take a look at the baseball card. How about we start with the Mariners and the Angels? We talked about this game a little bit yesterday, trying to figure out why the Mariners were an underdog just because Shohei Ohtani was pitching against Castillo.
That ninth inning, by the way, beautiful thing from the Angels.
Yeah, game was 2-2 going to the ninth, and then the Angels did angel things and turned it into a 6-2 loss, which was good for us. Here, the line's actually probably more what you would expect. The Mariners a relatively solid favorite here over the Angels. Robbie Ray, he's been a 500 pitcher, but he's pitched a lot better of late. I pulled up a number yesterday where in his last 11 starts, he's only 3-2, but his ERA is like 2.76, I believe it was. And you take into consideration that 2 of those starts were the ones he got blown up by the Astros in late July. So if you throw those 2 innings out, or those 2 starts out when he gave up 10 runs in 5 2/3 innings, in his other 9 starts, his ERA is 1.51. Now, I get Jose Suarez is pitching well. You'll be like, well, he's won 3 straight starts. He hasn't given up an earned run in 17 1/3 innings. Well, Rachel, let me tell you something. you could pitch against the teams that Suarez has pitched against and probably not give up an earned run. Because he faced the Royals and he faced the A's twice.
It's a pretty favorable schedule.
Yeah, the Mariners, as mediocre as they are offensively, are not the Royals or the A's. I don't have faith in Suarez. I don't have faith in the Angels lineup, which I'll get to again later on because they're whiff happy. The Angels don't win at home. They don't win on the road.
They're a bad team.
Ryan points out that Ray has had his struggles on the road this season, but he's been a lot better in the last couple of months. And here, the Mariners, they're fighting for a playoff spot. I'm going to take the team that has something to play for over the team that has nothing to play for other than, pride. And let's face it, the Angels don't have any of that either.
Yeah, it's one of those spots where even if Ray has been struggling on the road, have fun betting the Angels. Can't be me. Can't be me. I'm not taking the Angels. That team is useless. And we saw, especially in that botched fielding play in the ninth inning, they're also not the smartest team in the world either. So I got to go with the Mariners here. The Angels, I am curious mentally where they're at because they had a great start to the year. Trout got hurt again. What else is new? It wouldn't surprise me if he misses the rest of the year. Ohtani's doing Ohtani things, and they still lose games. And the Mariners are still competing for the first playoff spot in basically 20 years. Yep. So I know for a fact the Mariners care about every game. The Angels mentally look like they don't care about for 80% of the games.
The Angels checked out in mid-May when they were leading the West.
I don't mind the run line for Seattle just because it's plus money, and fading a crappy team while getting a guaranteed 9 at-bats I do think is tempting. So if I was going to play this, I recognize the struggles on the road for Ray, but I do like plus money fading the Angels with a guaranteed 9 at-bats and with that awful Angels bullpen.
And God knows, it is horrible.
It is really bad, especially since they traded their closer. So it got even worse.
Yeah, I was surprised they dealt Iglesias. Were you?
And he was good for them.
Yeah, were you surprised that he got moved?
No. I'm surprised that they haven't tried to move more pieces. I mean, they got rid of Syndergaard, so they were moving a decent amount of pieces, but at the same point, you're rearranging chairs in the Titanic. You're going to have to blow up the entire team.
That is a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Jim says the Mariners need to dominate the Angels to keep that playoff run going.
And they haven't. They're actually 6-7 against the Angels this season.
Well, I mean, we've seen that happen with a lot of teams. I mean, you look at the Guardians, they lead the Central, and they've got a losing record against the Tigers.
That was the Yankees last year. They were pretty good in division play, or for the most part, but they randomly struggled against Baltimore.
Yeah.
It just happens.
It's weird because they normally beat the piss out of Baltimore.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the other game, which is the Philadelphia Phillies and the Reds. Boy, can you go wrong by fading the Reds? I mean, they're throwing TJ Zook again.
He's one of the only pitchers on the roster that's worse than Minor.
Which is saying something.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, he made his season debut against the Mets last week, gave up 6 runs in 4 innings, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He also hit 2 guys, so.
Wasn't he also terrible in AAA?
I believe he was.
I thought he was.
It wouldn't surprise me. But, who else do the Reds have? I mean,
nobody.
They're down to what? Who's their number one starter now? Ashcraft?
Basically, because Green was up there even though his numbers weren't good and he's injured. So,
all right, in the minors this year, okay. Zook was a combined 0-5 with a 6.70 earned run average and 13 starts.
A 6.7 ERA in 13 minor league starts, and he's pitching in the major leagues.
His whip was 1.774. He walked 22, struck out 54. What's even better is he made 13 starts that totaled 45 and 2/3 innings.
As far as I'm concerned, the Phillies are basically an auto play. I'm not a big Gibson guy, so maybe a team total over with 9 at-bats in Great American. But you got to fade Zook. I don't know how you avoid it. He's been awful at every level, including the minors.
Ryan said Votto got 5 outs on 4 pitches.
It's not bad.
And JC said since he sucks at baseball, he threw money on Toronto, Cleveland, and St. Louis on a 3-banger. They're all heavy favorites. Which one of the 3 are going to punk him? Well he's going to pick Houston Astros.
I was going to say Berrios is pitching for Toronto, so people like their
Berrios. I thought it was
not Berrios. Sorry, Manoah. Sorry, my bad. No, I was going to say, if Barrios was pitching, I'd obviously be on Baltimore. But
Yeah,
Manoah's pitching for Toronto. He's been good. Kramer's been quietly good, though. I think Toronto's on a bit of an upset alert just because Baltimore has really done well against that team. So I think they might be the upset. I do like St. Louis tonight. Mikolas got shelled in Coors. I think he pitches well against them in an immediate revenge spot. I think he'll pitch well. And Cleveland, it's mostly involving playing against the Tigers. And I'll go. I know Plecek's 2-10, so that's a little bit intimidating. I was going to say he's very good against the Tigers, and his overall numbers are okay. They're not great, but they're fine. And Hill hasn't not been good. So if you want a prediction on which team's going to screw you, I'll go with Toronto because that team has been playing some terrible baseball for the last couple weeks.
Also, it's not Mikolas, it's Quintana going for the Cardinals.
I thought it was Mikolas. My bad. Sorry, but Quintana's been. He also didn't pitch. Wait, he pitched okay in Coors. He was gifted about 6 runs in the first inning because Freeland got shelled. But Quintana's been okay. I think he'll pitch well. Either way, point is the Rockies we know are a useless road team. I think St. Louis should win tonight. So,
yeah, I actually backed Manoah just because of the fact that we talked about this last week when the game got rained out. Is Kramer likes to throw cutters to right-handed hitters, and if you want to throw out a random home run prop, Matt Chapman slaughters the cutter. So look for him to potentially take Kramer deep. I'm concerned about Kramer on the road. Manoah was pitched okay in the last start against Baltimore. He gave up 3 runs in 5 innings. Left with the lead. Then they had the rain delay, so he didn't get to come out for the 6th, and then Toronto's bullpen proceeded to blow it.
Odor hit a bomb.
Yeah, of all the friggin' people, you know?
Yep.
I'm sure that really made Toronto fans happy.
Point is, though, he was mediocre in his last time out against Baltimore, and the Orioles, they sold at the deadline, and they're still cooking, and they've been good against Toronto. So if you want to talk about a team that might be a live dog, I don't mind Baltimore worst-case scenario plus 1.5. I think Kramer's good enough to keep this game close.
That's true. And, we saw that win yesterday. And, of course, let's not overlook what Sandy Alcantara did yesterday, or Alcantara did yesterday either.
Any thoughts on the Profar situation?
What did he do now?
Rojas hit a double into the gap, and Profar fielded it, and he proceeded to do a daring motion, saying, "I dare you to take third base," and Rojas took third base. He beat the throw, and then he ended up scoring on a single with the next batter. It didn't matter anyway because Miami was already up 2-0, and Alcantara, what do you know, gave up no runs. It's over. He's winning the Cy Young.
The bullpen, or Scott tried to give it away in the 9th, though. He put the tying run at the plate.
Yeah, but they got out of it. But Alcantara pitched well. But yeah, Profar did a gesture saying, "I dare you to go for it. I'll throw you out," and he did not throw him out. And Machado, Soto, and Hosmer all started yelling at Profar in the dugout, as they should, by the way.
The only guy that should be trying to dare anybody to run on him would have been Bo Jackson.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe Vlad Sr.
True. So, but, Profar is not what does he think? Was he watching Rookie of the Year before the game?
And Rojas is fast. It wasn't like he was daring Miguel Cabrera or Yadier Molina. No, Rojas has some speed.
Yeah, maybe he was trying to think it was Hunter Renfroe the other day.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Ryan mentioned Paredes being 2 for 2 against Cortez with a pair of homers. The question is, will he play? Because he doesn't play all the time.
No, he'll play against Cortez. I know that Cash is smart enough to look at the head-to-head numbers against pitchers and see, 2 for 2 with 2 homers. Yeah, okay, you're in the lineup. I'll move some things around. But the wind's blowing in. It's mostly from left to right, though, so I don't know how much it's going to impact the actual right-handed bats, but it's still blowing in diagonally. I still like Cortez as a pitcher, but plus 650, he's 2 for 2 with some power, so I don't mind that.
The sad part is that, he's played 69 games. He's got 225 at-bats. He's got 14 homers. And he's second on the team because the only guy with more is Arozarena, who's got 15 homers in 418 at-bats.
And Paredes also had 3 against
no pop.
I don't know how many of those home runs were against the Yankees, but he had 3 in one game. And I think he had a home run the game after. So a decent amount of those homers were in basically a 2 or 3 game stretch.
Let's see, against the Yankees this season.
I'm going to guess like 6 home runs against the Yankees.
4.
4, okay. So he had 3 in one game, 1. Okay, I thought he might have had another one in there. But
Yep, 4 against them, 3 against Toronto, 2 against Baltimore, 2 against Detroit.
Okay.
1 against the Twins, 1 against the Pirates, and
but he's
one
a
against
division killer. You mentioned the main 3 being division
Yep.
teams.
So he didn't homer against Boston. He's only 3 for 14 against them.
Okay.
You figure it out.
I can't. By the way, if you want to prop on this matchup with the Phillies game, because we do have the slide still up, the wind is blowing out to right field.
Oh,
if you want to stack up on lefties, I don't mind it. Fraley, I saw, was like plus 450. I don't mind that. Maybe even Votto. I thought about a possibility there, but yeah, Gibson's given up a lot of home runs. So wind blowing out to right.
Does Fraley have enough pop to drive one out? I see he's got 4 homers.
He homered yesterday.
Okay, that's true.
Well,
so
Fraley's not that bad.
Yeah, I remember he played in Seattle last year.
Yeah, he's not terrible. But once again, it's plus 450, plus 400, whatever. But Votto maybe. The point is stacking up on lefties against Gibson with the wind blowing out. It's not a bad approach.
And what do you stack up against Zook? Does it matter?
See, that's the thing. Zook's numbers are terrible, but he's only given up 1 home run. The issue is everybody gets hits. So find the middle ground there.
That's true. All right, let's move on to 2 for the money. We got, it's the Phillies and the Mariners. Wow, That made it easy, didn't it?
It did.
I like the Cubs. They pissed me off last night because they led 3-0, and Stroman fell apart in the 5th.
That was a brutal first 5 loss if you had the Cubs. It was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, then they fell apart, and they tied it up, and then they gave up a homer to Nelson Cruz in the 8th. But today it's Justin Steele going against Patrick Corbin, everybody's favorite punching bag when it comes to pitchers in the National League since Adon isn't around. And, it reminds me of Major League 2 where Harry Doyle talking about Rick Vaughn. He said, hey, why not get a hit? Everybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that the Cubs should be able to beat up on Corbin. And Steele's pitched pretty well, of late. He went over his strikeout prop in the 3rd inning against the Nationals last week when we were talking about that game. And then the Guardians, I like them over the Tigers. I mean, Garrett Hill, his FIP is over 5. I know he beat the Guardians earlier this year. But this is the 3rd time that Cleveland's going to see him in a small sample size because, he's only made, I think, 7 starts.
Yeah.
So, Plesac pitches well against Detroit. The Guardians just saw Hill last week when these teams met up. I think that Cleveland will come out with the victory in that one after losing the 2nd game of that doubleheader last night in the battle. In the battle of who gives a shit for pitchers because there were 2 nobodies.
Yeah, I was going to say Detroit went out can't hit. I saw Javi Baez hit a fly ball off a bounce pitch in fake cricket in baseball. But the Cubs, I actually like on the run line in this game. It's pretty self-explanatory. You have Corbin pitching. And Corbin has been, you could make an argument, the worst starting pitcher in the league because he's still starting. Like the other starters who were awful, like Bruce Zimmerman and Adon, eventually they got sent down or injured. Corbin is still going. He's still going, not even strong for fading, but he's been useless. And the Cubs lost a game they should have won yesterday, but I do like the run line there for the Cubs. Maybe even alternative, if you want to go for a huge plus price, maybe 2.5. Basically just pick, maybe even first 5, 1.5 or 2.5. Just pick Corbin to give up 4 or 5 runs on the first 5 and hope Steele holds his own. Probably a decent plus price.
Corbin, just for fun here, his last 3 starts. Are you ready for this, Scott?
Yeah, sure.
0-3. Earned run average 25.41. A 4.06 whip. Opponents have an on-base percentage of .610.
So the entire team is a better version of Barry Bonds.
He's pitched 5 2/3 innings in 3 starts, giving up 16 runs on 19 hits.
Just saying, Cubs first 5 minus 1.5 is plus 136, plus 2.5 is plus 210, and minus 3.5 is plus 320. You could chop around, but I don't mind the 1.5 there in the first 5 at plus 136 if you just want Steele against Corbin.
Yeah,
I don't
Corbin's
mind that.
given up at least 4 runs in each of his last 6 starts.
And I think Steele's good enough to hold the Nationals below 3 in the first 5.
Yeah, he held him to 2 over 6 innings last week in his last start. Got a no decision in that game.
So if you want to go for alternative run lines and just fade Corbin, I think it's a pretty good approach.
Yeah, Steele's allowed just 3 earned runs in his last 4 starts combined.
Yep.
So, yeah, not looking good for Pat Corbin. But, Jeffrey Mayer says he loves the over in hits at 16.5.
I got to check the weather report there. I got to like the over as well because Corbin's going to give up a lot of base runners. And even Steele. I mean, he had that one really nice strikeout performance against Miami, but he doesn't strike out everybody. Like, I do think that the Nationals will get guys on base. The question is, are they going to strand a lot of them? But if you want to actually go through the wind is blowing slightly in from right to left at roughly 5 miles an hour, but it's not that much. Still 77. Conditions should be fine. Yeah, I don't mind that either.
And to your point about him not striking guys out, he actually fanned 9 Washington hitters in 6 innings last week.
Yeah, 5.5 is a pretty low K number.
Yeah, I've actually got it coming up, so
yep.
There's that. And JoJo Rabbit said Cubs' first 5 team total over 2.5 is at minus 105. That's a pretty safe bet, wouldn't you say? Considering we just said Corbin's given up 16 runs in 5 innings.
Yeah, I think it's either safe or you could take one of the first 5 alternative run lines and just bank on Steele pitching well with Corbin getting shelled. And that way, even if the Cubs score 2 runs, you might still win if it's 2-0.
That's true.
So.
And now 4 for the show. God, this was tough. The Red Sox over the Pirates. It's Pivetta against Mitch Keller. I'd rather have Helen Keller pitching than Mitch. I know he's been better lately, but let's face it, the Pirates are not good.
Is Mitch Helen's brother? No. Well, he should be.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I know he hasn't given up more than 3 runs in his last 6 starts, but you know what? The Pirates have lost 4 of those anyway.
Yeah.
Because they don't score any runs.
And the Red Sox just beat the Yankees. They have some confidence or morale at this point.
And, you have to hope that Pavetta's, not going to continue to suck because he's
the Pirates can't hit either. So,
well, that's true. But, he's 0-4 in his last 8 starts. He's due to bounce back up. The Padres over the Marlins. Let's face it, the Padres got shut out yesterday by the guy that, like Scott said, is basically a runaway NL Cy Young winner. They might as well give it to him now. Edward Cabrera, as good as he might be, he's not Alcantara. And
good though.
Yeah, but the Padres, we talked about how they lost to Washington over the weekend, and they came back and shut them out 6-0 on Sunday. San Diego's team has too much talent in that lineup to be shut down again by a mediocre, well, slightly above average pitcher, but still, he's not good enough to contain them the way Alcantara did.
What was the Marlins team total yesterday? Was it 2.5 or 3.5?
It was 2.5.
Okay, so they finally went over. So the Marlins in their last 16 games, or roughly 15 or so, because there was a push in there, which I don't know how accurate it is. They're 114-1 on their team totals for the over. So they're 14-1-1 in their last 16 team total unders.
I'm just going to look and see what their team total is for today because, Manaea isn't necessarily.
I'm just saying, 14-1-1. Like, I've been talking about the Yankees going under for the last week and change. The Marlins have done it for 2+ weeks. They finally went over. They were 0-14-1 going into yesterday, and they went over by half a run.
The Marlins today, over 3.5 is plus 120, under 3.5 minus 155.
I mean, it makes sense.
Over 2.5, it flips around. It's minus 155 for the over and plus 120 for the under.
I think I'd have to like the under for the team total because Miami might not need to bat in the 9th if you expect another low-scoring game. I'm leaning to the under. I just don't see many runs here. But San Diego, if they score 3, are probably good because Miami can barely reach 2. So I don't mind the Padres.
Robbie Ray over 7.5 strikeouts. We talked about how the Angels like to strike out. Ray's faced the Angels twice this season, struck out 10 both times.
Yep.
And God knows this isn't the Angels lineup that has Trout in it or anybody else besides Ward and Ohtani. I mean, I guess Rengifo homered again yesterday, of course.
Mm.
Rai said the Marlins were 20-0 to the team total under at home before yesterday.
Yep.
And finally, the Diamondbacks over the Giants. Scott, explain to me why Merrill Kelly is an underdog to Jake Junis.
Because the Giants are the better overall team, but I'll take Kelly because Junis sucks. I mean,
there you go.
What has Junis done in the last 2-3 starts? He barely even gets into the third inning anymore. He's just been getting shelled.
Yeah, I know he got smacked around. Which day was it that he pitched?
The Dodgers crushed him, and he got crushed the time after. But
he got crushed by San Diego.
Yeah, San Diego. That's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, 6 runs in 2 1/3.
Yeah, and Kelly didn't do well for me last time out because I had the first 5 against the Pirates, but the defense didn't help him either. Kind of similar to what happened in that Angels game yesterday with just bad fielding. But Kelly's so good. Worst case scenario, Diamondbacks first 5. Worst case scenario.
I could see that.
So.
And now we go to the shot in the dark. A lot of familiar names here, let's be honest.
Yep.
Paul Goldschmidt. What a surprise.
Yep.
I'm surprised he's at plus money facing Freeland.
Especially since he just faced Freeland.
Yeah. Same with Ramirez. I'm surprised that he's at plus money facing anybody for Detroit.
Yep.
This one's a bit of a shock, I know, but I think Rizzo, he hits Springs fairly well earlier this year, and somebody's got to get a hit for the Yankees that's not named Judge.
Okay.
By the way, what's the deal with LeMahieu? Is he day-to-day, or are they going to put him on the IL?
He's got a toe issue, so nobody knows. They're kind of just waiting it out right now. By the way, you said Rizzo's done well against Springs?
That's what I thought I saw. I could have been crossed up.
It says he's 0 for 4 lifetime.
Okay, I must have looked at the wrong thing.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Rizzo could still go yard, but it is worth discussing at least the splits with lefty-righty with Rizzo because Springs is a lefty. I'm not sure how long he's going to pitch. Probably like 5. But if
5 or 6 at least.
I was going to say, if you want to actually look at Rizzo's numbers against the lefties this season, 213 average, but against righties, he's 224. So there's not that much of a drop-off there. But, oh well.
Yeah, I'm so used to him hitting in the 270s or so. It's weird to see him hitting, 221.
Going into the year, I thought Rizzo would hit 250. That's the number I had.
That's about where he was last year.
Yeah, I figured it'd be the same thing.
Why is Freddie Freeman going off this high? Did they not watch the game yesterday?
It's because Woodruff's pitching. I don't care, but that's the reason why.
I mean, still. Lindor, I could have put Pete Alonso here, but Lindor has a better price.
It's also a switch. So
yeah, and he's been on a roll of late, too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stick with Arias. He only got 1 hit yesterday. Disappointed me. He actually struck out, too, which was weird because he doesn't do that all that often. I'm sticking with the A's here, too, because, hey, let's face it, they pitched well enough yesterday. They just didn't get any runs. Mm. Today, it's J.P. Sears, guy you're familiar with, Scott, going against Kohei. Oh, hell. How do you pronounce his last name?
You're asking me?
I'm trying to remember what. Arahara.
Yeah.
He got called up from Round Rock to pitch.
I was going to say, this isn't his first time in the majors. It's his first time this year in the majors. And last year, 6.64 ERA. He's been bad in the playoffs.
JoJo also saying the Yankees, White Sox, and Angels all nerfies at plus 386.
Okay.
Very tempting.
I don't mind that.
Yeah, the White Sox game is an interesting one. I didn't want to touch it. It's Verlander and Cease.
Yeah, I don't mind that at plus 386. So you might lose for some BS solo home run, but I think it's decent value.
What do you think of that game, by the way? Verlander Cease.
I thought that the White Sox are the experts of making sure Cease's good starts go undecided. Like he really pitches well every time, and either the defense struggles for him and he loses because of unearned runs, or it's tied. But Cease is very good. Verlander's very good. I know that the Astros lost his last start against Texas. I thought Verlander pitched okay. I'll lean to Houston because they're just the much better team.
Cease 14 straight starts, giving up 1 earned run or less.
But as soon as they pull him, I think the White Sox bullpen's an underrated gas can.
This is true.
So I'll still lean to Houston.
Then on here, Manoah over 5.5 strikeouts.
Okay.
Verlander over 6.5. Surprised he was at plus money. And there's Steele over 5.5 at plus 105. Like I said, he struck out 10 Marlins 2 starts ago. He struck out 9 Nationals last week in 6 innings. Struck out 6 Giants in 3 2/3 in his start before that. So 25 punch-outs in his last 3 starts. And let's face it, the Washington lineup doesn't really strike fear in the hearts of anybody.
No, it does not. Cool. Anything else you want to add?
No. What conference do you want to hit tomorrow?
I'll let you pick.
How about, let's see, what do we got left? Do you want to do the Mountain West or do you want to do the MAC?
We can do the Mountain West. We'll say
All right,
MAC for last because the MAC's always the psycho conference.
Hey, that's what makes it so entertaining.
Oh,
Where else
it
do you
does.
find games that are 70 to 67 every week?
It's my favorite conference.
For overs.
Really for overs and in general, because a lot of these high-scoring games are like on a Tuesday.
That's
it's
true.
Really just the perfect midweek over, just something to watch. It's high quality based on the schedule.
That's true.
But
Tuesday,
that's kind
Wednesday,
of a bonus. Yeah, they dominate the TV for college football in my household. But either way, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Just Parlay show here at the Max Wagers Network. We'll be back once again, same time tomorrow, going through the Mountain West and also going through some baseball. But until then, good luck to all of you and all your bets. Bye, everyone.